The morning of my cousin's engagement party, I was standing in my bathroom trying to curl my hair when my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I was already running 20 minutes behind, and the party was at 1 o'clock at my aunt's place in Oakville. But something made me tap the notification. Don't go to the party today. Check Daniel's laptop. Look in the downloads folder. I'm sorry you have to find out this way. I stood there with the curling iron still in my hand, staring at those 3 sentences. My first thought was that it was a wrong number. My second thought was that someone was pranking me. Daniel was my husband of 6 years, an accountant at a mid-size firm in downtown Toronto, a man who remembered to buy oat milk when we were running low, and never forgot to text me when he was working late. We had a mortgage in Mississauga, a golden retriever named Biscuit, and dinner with my parents every second Sunday. There was nothing to find on his laptop. I set the curling iron down on the counter and typed back, "Who is this?" The message showed as delivered. No response came. I told myself to forget it. I finished my hair, put on the green wrap dress I'd been saving for the occasion, and went downstairs. Daniel was at the kitchen table with his coffee and the Globe and Mail like it was any other Saturday morning. He looked up and smiled. "You look great," he said. "Thanks." I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. "Are you sure you don't want to come? My aunt would love to see you." He made a face, the same apologetic face he always made. "I've got that report due Monday. I really need to get ahead of it this weekend. Tell Angela and Marcus congratulations from me, okay?" Angela was my cousin. Marcus was the man she'd been dating for 2 years, a kind, soft-spoken engineer from Hamilton who brought flowers every time he came to family dinners. The engagement party had been my aunt's idea, a backyard gathering, maybe 40 people, catered by a local place that did really good samosas and butter chicken, because Marcus's family was from Punjab, and my aunt wanted to honor that. It was going to be a beautiful afternoon. I nodded at Daniel, told him I'd be home by 7, and walked out to my car. I sat in the driveway for probably 2 full minutes. Then I went back inside. Daniel was still at the kitchen table. He looked up, surprised. "Forget something?" "My sunglasses," I said. I grabbed them off the entry table and went upstairs instead of back out the door. His home office was the second room on the right. His laptop was open on the desk, the screensaver slowly cycling through photos from our trip to Banff 2 summers ago. I told myself I was just going to look. I told myself I would see nothing and feel stupid and drive to Oakville and drink Prosecco in my aunt's backyard and laugh about it later. I moved the trackpad and the screen came to life. I opened the Finder, I clicked on Downloads. The folder was organized the way Daniel organized everything: neat, methodical, sorted by date. Most of it was what I expected. CRA tax documents, PDF receipts, a few work files with names I didn't recognize. And then, near the top, a folder with no name. Just a string of numbers that looked like a date from 14 months ago. I double-clicked it. There were photographs. My hands went cold before my brain fully processed what I was seeing. The pictures were on a beach somewhere warm. Somewhere that was definitely not anywhere we had ever gone together. Daniel was in several of them. He was laughing, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. And beside him, in almost every photo, was a woman I recognized immediately. It was my cousin Angela's best friend, Priya. Priya, who had been at every family birthday, every holiday dinner, every summer barbecue for the past 4 years. Priya, who had stood in my kitchen last Christmas drinking mulled wine and telling me how lucky Angela was to have found someone like Marcus. Priya, who had texted me 3 weeks ago, asking what I was planning to wear to the engagement party so we wouldn't clash. I scrolled without fully meaning to. There were more folders inside the first, older ones. I opened one dated almost 2 years back and found hotel receipts: the Pantages in Toronto, twice. A reservation at a restaurant in Niagara-on-the-Lake. An e-transfer confirmation for something I couldn't immediately understand, until I read the memo line and realized it was rent. A partial rent payment for an apartment I had never heard of, to a name I didn't recognize, but the amount $1,100, which was exactly half of what a one-bedroom in that part of the city would have cost, felt deliberate. Like splitting something down the middle. I should have felt devastated right then. Maybe I did, somewhere underneath the strange mechanical calm that had taken over my body. But what I kept coming back to was the timing. Angela's engagement party was in 2 hours. Priya was going to be there. She was Angela's maid of honor. She had helped plan the whole afternoon. I took out my phone and photographed every screen. Not because I was thinking clearly, but because some part of me understood that I needed proof I could hold in my hands, evidence that existed outside of that laptop on that desk in that room that suddenly felt like a room I'd never actually known. Then I closed everything exactly as I'd found it, walked downstairs past Daniel who was still reading the paper, and got back in my car. I drove to Oakville on the 403 with the radio off. I don't remember most of that drive. I remember a transport truck cutting in front of me near the Aaron Mills exit and my hands tightening on the wheel. I remember thinking about the text message and wondering, with a clarity that almost hurt, how long someone had known. How long someone had been sitting with this information before they finally decided to send it to me, because it hadn't been Daniel who sent it. He was downstairs making coffee. And it hadn't been Priya. She had no reason on earth to expose herself. So who? Who had known, and for how long? And what finally made them type those words? I pulled into my aunt's street and sat in the car for another minute. Through the wooden gate at the side of the house, I could already hear voices and music, something soft playing on a Bluetooth speaker. Someone laughed. I could smell the catering warming up. Angela called me at that moment, as if she sensed something. "Hey, are you close? Mom's been asking about you." "I'm right outside," I said. "I'll be in a second." "Are you okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine," I said. "I'll explain later." "Just is Priya there?" A brief pause. "She just got here, yeah." "Why?" "No reason." "I'm coming in." I put my phone in my bag and walked through the gate. The backyard looked exactly the way my aunt had described it when she'd been planning for weeks. White string lights threaded through the pergola, round tables with cream tablecloths, a little card at each place setting with both families' names printed in a font Angela had stressed over for 3 days. Marcus was standing near the drink table with his father and his brother, and he had that quiet happiness on his face that made you feel glad just to look at it. My aunt spotted me immediately and came over with her arms out. I let her hug me. I smiled. I took a glass of sparkling water because I knew if I started on wine right then I would lose whatever fragile composure I was managing to hold. Priya was at the far end of the yard talking to Angela's younger sister. She was wearing a coral dress, and her hair was down and she was smiling at something, completely at ease. She didn't see me come in. I found Angela by the food table and pulled her gently by the elbow. "I need to talk to you," I said quietly. "In a minute. Not right now. But before this afternoon gets too far along." She searched my face. Angela had always been able to read me better than almost anyone. We'd grown up 2 streets apart. Spent every summer together, as been each other's emergency contacts for years before either of us had partners to fill that role. She knew immediately that something was wrong. "Okay," she said carefully. "Give me 5 minutes to get through the welcome toast with Marcus's parents." I nodded and moved toward the far corner of the yard where there was a small bench half hidden by a cedar hedge. I sat down and watched the party happen around me. Priya moved through the guests like she belonged exactly where she was, laughing, refilling someone's glass, leaning over to adjust the flowers in the centerpiece on Angela's. I thought about the photographs on Daniel's laptop. Angela came to find me 11 minutes later. I know because I timed it. I didn't know how to start, so I just handed her my phone with the photos already pulled up. I watched her scroll. I watched her face go from confused to still to something I can only describe as a grief that happens before the pain has fully arrived, when the brain understands something the heart is still refusing. "How long?" she asked. Her voice was very quiet. "At least 2 years from what I found. Maybe longer." She handed the phone back. She looked across the yard at Priya, who was now laughing at something Marcus's brother had said. "She was at my house last week," Angela said. "She sat at my kitchen table and helped me write the seating chart." Neither of us said anything for a long moment. "This is your decision," I finally said. "Whatever you want to do, I will back you completely. We can leave. We can wait. We can—" "No," Angela said. Quietly, but without any hesitation. "No. Marcus deserves to know. His family is here. My family is here. I'm not starting an engagement on top of this." She stood up, smoothed her dress, and walked back into the party looking completely composed. I had never admired anyone more in my life. What happened next was not loud. That was the thing that surprised me most. I had imagined confrontations like this as explosive, voices raised, things thrown. What Angela did was simply walk up to Priya in the middle of a small group of guests and say, in a perfectly level voice, "Can I show you something?" And she took my phone, which I had handed back to her at some point, and she held it up so Priya could see the screen. Priya's face did something complicated. A rapid sequence of expressions that collapsed into a kind of horrible stillness. She opened her mouth. "Don't," Angela said. Still that same quiet voice. "Please don't." Marcus had come over by then because he could see from across the yard that something was wrong. Angela turned to him and I watched her take his hand and I watched her tell him in a low voice, close to his ear, what she'd just learned. I watched his face change. He looked at Priya. Then he looked at Angela with an expression that was heartbroken and furious and full of a love that the situation hadn't managed to touch. Priya left. She picked up her bag from where she'd set it on a chair and she walked back through the side gate without saying anything to anyone else. And the gate latched shut behind her, and that was it. It was almost quiet. My aunt appeared at my elbow from nowhere, the way mothers always do. "What happened?" she asked. "I'll explain," I said. "Give us a minute." Marcus's mother had noticed. A few guests who'd been standing close enough had noticed. But the afternoon didn't collapse, it changed shape. My aunt, bless her, understood within about 3 minutes what had happened and promptly redirected the caterers to bring out the food early, because feeding people is how she manages any crisis, and it worked the way it always works. People moved toward the tables. Conversations resumed, quieter at first, then gradually more normal. Marcus sat beside Angela and didn't let go of her hand for the rest of the afternoon. I stepped away to call Daniel. He answered on the second ring, the way he always did. "Hey, is everything okay?" "No," I said. "I need you to still be home when I get there." "A beat. What's going on?" "I found the downloads folder," I said. The silence that followed lasted long enough that I knew. There was no confusion in it, no innocent scrambling to understand what I meant. Just silence. And then a sound that might have been a breath, or might have been the start of something he couldn't finish. "Stay home," I said again. "We need to talk." I hung up and stood in the side yard of my aunt's house for a while with my back against the warm wood of the fence. The string lights had come on in the pergola, even though it was still afternoon. Inside the yard, I could hear my aunt's voice and Marcus's father laughing at something and a child running and the quiet clink of glasses. Life doing what life does, continuing, finding the shape of itself around whatever breaks through it. I thought about the unknown number. I thought about it the rest of that afternoon and through the long, terrible conversation that happened when I got home, and through the weeks that followed, which I won't describe here except to say they were exactly as hard as you'd expect, and that I had my sister and my cousin and my aunt around me in the way that made all the difference. I kept going back to that message. "I'm sorry you have to find out this way." Someone had known. Someone had sat with that knowledge and decided, on the morning of an engagement party, that enough was enough. 4 months later, I found out who. It was Marcus's brother. He'd overheard a phone call, Priya and Daniel, careless in the way people get when they've been hiding something long enough that it starts to feel normal. He hadn't known what to do with what he knew. He'd held it for 3 weeks, and then he'd thought about Marcus standing at that party believing everything was fine, and he'd typed the message and sent it to me because he couldn't find any other way through. He never told me himself. Angela told me. She heard it from Marcus, who'd finally asked his brother directly. When I found out, I sent a message to the unknown number. I just said, "I know it was you. Thank you. You changed things." He didn't write back. He didn't need to. I think about that sometimes, about what it costs to send a message like that. To decide that someone deserves the truth more than you deserve the comfort of staying out of it. Most people choose the quiet life. Most people convince themselves it isn't their business, or that they might be wrong, or that the fallout isn't worth it. He sent it anyway. My divorce was finalized 6 months after that afternoon. The process in Ontario was exactly as tedious and expensive and emotionally exhausting as everyone tells you it will be. The legal fees alone were something I had not budgeted for, and dividing the equity in the Mississauga house turned into a months-long negotiation that I won't relive here. But I got through it. I got through it because of the people who showed up, and because of one stranger who decided I deserved to know. Angela and Marcus got married last September. Small ceremony at a vineyard near Niagara. I stood beside her. Biscuit wore a little bow tie because Marcus is exactly the kind of person who makes that happen and means it completely without irony. At the reception, Angela leaned over to me during dinner and said, "Can you believe a year ago I almost didn't know any of this?" I knew what she meant. The version of us that almost made it through that afternoon without knowing anything, the version where we smiled in the photos and toasted the engagement and went home to our separate lives, and let the lies keep their shape. I don't know what your version of the downloads folder is. Maybe you already know something doesn't feel right and you've been telling yourself you're imagining it. Maybe someone has been trying to reach you and you've been afraid of what reaching back might mean. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm only here to tell you what I know. The truth arrived on the worst possible day, and it still managed to be the most important thing that could have happened. Whatever's in the folder, you're stronger than finding out.